What's the matter with Molly? It was a busy day on the island of Sodor, and the other engines have worked so hard that they were very happy to be looking forward to the end of a busy day. Everyone was very pleased, except Molly. She was feeling ill. Molly had been known to be a shy steamer with a delicate fire that had to be handled carefully. She struggled every day and couldn't get back to the sheds for a rest. But whenever she told the other engines, they just laughed. Murdoch and Ivo Hugh both thought she was just silly. "It's only your smoke box, Molly," said Ivo Hugh. "You probably just don't have the same stamina as I do." "Or me," grumbled Murdoch. You're probably just a fake hippopotamus. "I think you mean hypochondriac, Murdoch," said Neville patiently. "In my theory, you're both acting silly." "Can't you just leave her alone?" he said crossly. Then Neville could see Molly looked miserable. Neville, she said, "I've worked so hard." "It's all right, Molly," said Neville kindly. "They've been built recently and don't understand, but I do. I know what age can do to an engine. Perhaps they can feel a comparison to you after all this time. Perhaps I might talk to the Fat Controller and see what he can do about it," said Neville kindly. "Thank you, Neville," said Molly, "but I do hope the Fat Controller can fix me up again," she doubted. Days passed, and Molly still didn't hear back from the Fat Controller. Although she tried not to worry, she began feeling herself straining again and was often struggling with these trains constantly. Neville, on the other hand, had been watching Molly the whole time, and he could see Molly was leaving puddles of water on the track. This began to make Neville feel worried even more. Until the next morning, Molly woke up feeling awful, and to make matters worse, she had a goods train to pull. "I don't have the strength to go out today," she said sadly, "but I've got to try." Then she began to feel pestered even more by Murdoch and Ivo Hugh when the turntable turned towards them both. "Come on, Molly," both Ivo Hugh and Murdoch just said. "You're not even trying." "I am," said Molly miserably. But it was no good. Moments after, Molly still had been trying to go faster, but it was no good. She didn't yet have enough steam, and she was almost out of coal and water. She had to climb up a hill, and she was still thieving. By the time Ivo Hugh arrived at the shunting yard, he had a naughty plan. "Please, sir," he said, "can I shunt 6 trucks for Molly? She's a big, strong engine and can manage them by herself." Of course, said the yard manager, if you say so. And the cheeky engine set off to work. Later, Neville met the Fat Controller at Wellsworth Station. I'm worried about Molly, Neville said sadly. Perhaps her tubes are leaking, said the Fat Controller. Go and find out what's happening immediately. Yes, sir, said Neville sadly. As soon as Molly arrived at the big yards, she already saw 6 of her trucks. Oh no, she moaned. Murdoch and Ivo Hugh both know I'm not feeling well, she said, and they fail to understand. You may not be well, said her driver, but we have to manage the train. Maybe, said Molly sadly. Soon Molly backed up slowly and gently onto her train. And then she pulled the train away. Molly tried really hard to pull the train. She tried very hard, but she was still wheezing. But as soon as she came through a tunnel and up the hill, she tried really hard. She pulled as hard as he could, but more puddles began to drip, and Molly was stuck. Bother, she said sadly. Now I'll never make it to the docks in time. Just then, Neville was on his way to Bluff's Coal when he saw Molly. Are you all right? He asked. No, moaned Molly. I'm stuck. Then Neville had an idea. Don't worry, he said. When I reverse my tender, I will pull you. Leave the trucks here. I'll go back for them later. Molly felt happier as Neville steamed off backwards. Until at last, Neville buffered up to Molly. They uncoupled Molly from the train until a while back up the hill, Neville's wheels started to turn as he heaved the heavy engine up the hill with his full might. And it wasn't too long until the 2 engines finally appeared from Shen Valley to the harbour docks, where the Fat Controller, Ivo Hugh and Murdoch were all finally waiting. Well done, Neville, said the Fat Controller. And Molly, you weren't well, but you've still managed to pull the heavy train, he said. Both Murdoch and Ivo Hugh looked ashamed. We're sorry, Molly, said Ivo Hugh. I didn't really think you were ill. I've asked the yard manager to get 6 trucks for you, said Ivo Hughes sadly. And the Fat Controller was very cross. Well, for your punishment, you can go back and find Molly's trucks. Yes, sir, said Murdoch and Ivo Hughes sadly. The next day, Neville arrived at the big station where he finally met Molly. Hello, Molly, Neville said happily. Are you feeling better now? Not yet, said poor Molly miserably. They fixed my tubes, me squeaky wheels, but they didn't even half look at me, she said, and she sulked miserably.